Hey guys, it's Ellen here. I'm working on another ink and wash, pen and ink and wash, watercolor, and vignette at the same time. This time a more architectural kind of building. I've picked a building, like a rooftop view from Rome. I have attached a reference photo for this as well to go by the colors and some of the elements here. But of course I edited most of that out. I'm not going to put in every single little detail that's in the buildings. It's just because it becomes really intense and hard. So, basically, just to teach you guys how to do some kind of architectural watercolor using this technique with the pen and ink. Like I said, I attached a reference photo, but if you're a Patreon member, you could download the traceable that I did with this. If you're not a Patreon member, you should check it out. I have ad-free videos, traceables, exclusive tutorials on Thursdays. That's like 4 extra tutorials that nobody else has on YouTube a month on Patreon. And on the top tier, a live stream once a month and download from me. So you can check it out right up here. So check that out. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And if you haven't hit the bell notification, please hit that so you know my tutorial's up. So without further ado, let's get painting. Alright guys, for this tutorial I'll go over my supplies. I have a piece of Arches 100% cotton cold pressed paper. I just taped down just on the top and the bottom on a piece of cardboard. It's a 7x10 piece. I attached a reference photo. If you're a Patreon member, like I said, you can download the traceable, which looks like what I have here. I have my palette, my paints. I'll be using the fountain nib tip ink pen after I paint down. We're going to do the opposite. I've been doing a lot of ink and wash tutorials where I do the Sharpie and then go in and paint it on top of it, and then if I want to add that at the end. I think for this one I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to paint it first and then I'm going to go in and add the ink at the end. And I have paper towels here, and I'll just play around with brushes and ink. So I have sketched in my sketch, you can see lightly in here, and we're going to just look at these colors. And I didn't sketch in, obviously, every single nook and cranny of every single window, every single detail, all the buildings behind this dome in Rome, the dome in Rome. Just like, this is how you edit photos. You just take out some pieces and you take, this is an inspiration, and you just kind of like paint it from there. So, and you can use a bunch of different brushes. I'm not going to use some small brushes. You don't get bogged down on every little shadow, paint color. We're just going to be washing in color. I can use my Princeton 10 round Neptune brush. I'll be using the 8 round. And maybe I'll use the 4. I'm going to start off with the Princeton 8. And see how there's a lot of terracotta colors with some yellow and orange and some browns. We're going to concentrate on things like that. So we have our yellow here, cadmium yellow deep. I also have a yellow ochre right here, which is a nice pretty color. I have a brilliant orange here, but that's really bright. We don't want that kind of orange. Maybe mix yellow ochre with it, or make orange with magenta and cadmium yellow deep, and you get like a more muted orange. You can add some burnt umber. See if we got these like nice orange tones, brown tones. Get the burnt umber over here. You see all the few gray tones. Let me try out this new color that a Patreon member gave me, neutral tint. Holbein. I've been using the black wash. Let's see how this works. This is called neutral tint. It's kind of purple. It has like a purple gray tone to it. Play around with that. So I've got all these colors mixed up. See I'm adding the yellow. One more yellow to that. I'm going to play around with oranges. See, making this a little more orangey yellow. Add a little brown gray to that. You want to mix up a fair amount though. See? Alright. So we're going to play around with just moving the color around and get some yellow in here too. Like I said, don't be afraid. Like I'm squinting my eyes and I can see more yellow, beigey kind of color tones in here. I'll water this down. and this little section. Like I said, I'm not going to get so bogged down in color tones. Just going to lightly wash in. So I'll zoom in. You can see my pencil marks of all this little building on the left here. Now that looks a little more beige. Add a little more brown. So I'll just water down my color a little more. Just going to lightly stick that in. See, I'm just kind of washing the color in. I can go and add some, there's little orange tones down here in a bit. I'm just going to put in this first color. Just like this, really loose. You know, when you're doing like an architectural type of drawing, painting, it doesn't have to be, see, I'm adding that orange part right there. It's bleeding a little bit, and that's okay. I want it to be more expressive than serious. Obviously around in here it's more orange, right? So I've got that orange tone that I mixed up. I'm grabbing my paintbrush, just kind of washing it in real quick. There's like orange with some white. As you can see, there's little white marks. And a little deeper orange in here. So we're doing wet on dry. The paper is dry. We're not bleeding any color of this particular exercise. We're just kind of putting in color here. So I'm just kind of washing in this orange. It's really intense orange in the front here. Kind of going around the spaces that I've drawn, the little windows and stuff. They're going to be much darker. But I'm just playing around with adding the color. Can add a little brown. Still keeping that kind of sketchy look. If it does bleed, like right here, it kind of bled a little bit. Don't worry about it. A little more brown orange. Some areas. Let me lift that up. So the building isn't going to be perfect. We're going to just kind of play around washing in color and then adding in the ink lines afterwards. If you have difficulty because you've washed out your lines, you can just go back with your trace on top of that again with the graphite paper. See, this is going to be darker, but we're just going to throw in some orange first. And some like bright, right here, some little shadows. Bright color. And then we'll add in some darker tones. See, I'm still kind of like leaving some white spaces in here. You can see with this one right here, it's darker. Let's go in and add that right in there. Kind of like a Pantheon type building here. I don't know if you've ever been to Rome, but a lot of great buildings. I mean, you can go crazy painting buildings in Rome all day. And you know what? Just because all this stuff shows it being yellow and orange, you can kind of change it up a bit. You can have some blues, some greens. Could be a residence. You know, you don't have to keep it all that way. Gonna maybe make the roof a little bit redder. Reddish brown. So I added some more magenta. It just shows it more orange, but I want to make it more in the red tones. See, like that. Or you can even add brown. Like I said, don't be afraid. Add a little brown over here. There's a building over here that's yellow. So I got this bright yellow. Why not just stick in that pretty bright yellow? Big gray windows on top. And then it has that red orange terracotta roof. I'm going to try and make it more on the red side. So we're going to eliminate that brown tone. Put more red in there. Just so it stands out a little more. You see? Sometimes I have to get up from my chair to see what I'm doing here. And adding the red color. Trying to see this. You know, you squint at it, it's like a lot of browns and grays here. We'll slowly be adding that. Meanwhile, go back to this building, which is like a nice bright orange. Like I said, I'm not going to follow it to the T. Get the windows there. I'm just going to give the idea of the colors. Doesn't have to be perfect. If you want to just fill in the whole thing and then go back in and add those deeper tones, that could work too. Maybe a little brown. The roof over here. Now we're not going to be painting the whole section of like this whole picture. We're painting just like a vignette. Now here you can see that it's like gray. So I'm going to add some gray over to the browns I had here. It's kind of gray over here, and that window's even darker than that. Try not to get to the building here too much. Same thing here. I'm still leaving kind of white specks in here, kind of in that sketchy look. Don't be afraid. And you see the shadow here. There's a shadow on the building here. A few shadows underneath here. See, putting in the dark, the gray shadows. Some lines. We can do that with the actual ink. See, dark gray under here, black under there. And the windows are like really black, gray here. So I'm really kind of working fast. I wanted to have that sketchy kind of quality. See, just taking, I'm still using the number 8 Princeton long round, by the way. Just going to fill in all these windows gray tone. If you want it darker, you can add, I would use black gouache, or it just makes it darker. Still going up in here and adding a little details. Just some kind of funky top. Now I'm not going to paint and draw every single nook and cranny that you see there, because that is intense. Go brown, and I'll draw the cross. This is still a little dip, but you can still kind of paint in some of the brown shadows. See that? And a little terracotta here. And going in here. Just kind of pushing in the color, see? Meow. Go back in here. A little more. This one has a bunch of different colors because I think there's a bunch of different tiles on this roof. So you can play around with that. Add some deeper tone here. On the side because it's in the shade. So you're going to grab some brown or gray. Mix in here. Trying to keep the details, but put in the shadow. So I just put in this tint color that we talked about, Now we're going to go back to this section in here. I'm just going to squint my eyes and see that window. There's some other tones playing around here. So I'm just going to push them down here. I'm not going to get real specific. This one's a little more orange down here that we lost it when it was bleeding. Really, I'm just kind of washing in some color. Squint your eyes, see what you see. The details will be in all the drawing in a bit anyway. There's a green door actually. I'll put that green door. I'll pop a green. Surprising. Bright green door. And these windows are gray. You could add a green building. You didn't have to follow this. See? Gray tones. There's so many little lines in here. We're going to just draw that in with our... Just going to wash in some more color up in here with that little doodad thing, whatever that thing is. There's like an orangey yellow roof. Orangey roof back here. And then terracotta color kind of here. This little statue thing. I don't know what it is. Putting in some of that orange color. Mine is not looking exactly like that, and I don't really care. I'm just going to be my artistic impression of what I think it looks like. You see? Don't have to follow the rules. Again, this is going to be a little bit darker here. And the windows. Just kind of squint your eye and look for the shadow. Of the building. Is it making any sense? I didn't finish this building. We'll play around with that. So once you get like your colors all kind of put in like this, you know, if we didn't do a sky, we can put a nice loose sky in. If you want to keep it in all these color tones, which are pretty, you can do that. I'm going in and adding some orangey yellows here. Listen, it's Italy, you know. Play around with the color. I'm adding a little more orange. Yellow here. Go back in here. Now there's some dark window here. And a little one here. And this one's much darker. And I'll kind of wash in some of this orange color here. Really, I'm going to use the pen for my advantage. And then just whatever building colors you want to put over here, you can put some more yellow colors, just kind of floating here. They're nothing burgers, I would call them. Just kind of putting in color. Brown roof here. All right, for the sky, like I said, I might grab my bigger brush, the Princeton 10 Neptune. You could do blues if you want to do blue sky. You want to keep it yellow tone, like a sunset. You know, play around with it. Try and figure out what you want to do. I've got blue, green here. Do I want a blue sky? Do I want a yellow sky? I feel like we don't have any blue anywhere, but I'm making more of a turquoisey kind of tone to balance the orange. I need something. A little more peacock. So it's peacock blue. I'll put a little yellow in there. Now, you can always test it on a crappy piece of... Let me grab my scrap. Sorry, guys. Let me grab the scrap. Okay, this is a big scrap because I messed up on a flower. And just see if I even like the blue. It's a little bright. Maybe add some ultramarine, some brown. Ooh. One more peacock. Play around with the blue. I'm playing around with my blue here. That one was too bright. That one's too dark. If we water it down, do we like it? Maybe. Add a little yellow to that. Okay, I think I'm gonna water this down and just use this. So it's like a mixture of blues. It's just kind of floating in that sky. Originally I was going to do some yellow oranges, but I decided to do some blue. Remember, it's a vignette, so we're not going to do the whole paper. We're just kind of washing in the blue. Just like a nice pale blue. That would work. I want to get a little deeper in some areas. You can. Not too much though. Okay. So now we got to let this whole thing dry. And we can come back and use our pen and ink for the final resistance. If you want to, before we do that, let me say, like I'm telling you, if you're going to use the ink like I'm using, you got to paint everything first. Make sure you get all the colors you want in. I'm going to go tweak this. And then we're going to come back and we're going to sketch in our little fun buildings for our little design. If you want to put a little blue down in here too to balance it, make some colors in here. Have some fun. See, I'm adding little blues in here. Why not? All right, so I'm going to let this dry and we're going to come back. Okay, once you get everything dry, you can grab your little nib. If you don't have one of these, you can use your calligraphy pen. Works just as well, just painting over it. And you're going to go and do all the fun lines that you want to see. See, and they don't have to be perfect. Going right over these areas. Oops. You can't do this one like the Sharpie where you do this first. Because it's ink, it's just going to bleed. The Sharpie is permanent ink. So it's a little different. So you just do all these little wiggle marks. Get all these little lines in here. Got the roof line going here. Just kind of going over all the little lines and drawings that you sketched out. This is a little time consuming, but the effect is great. And take your time because this stuff can splatter. Have you seen some of my videos where that happens? It's kind of funny. See, use it like a pen, you know. You just take your time pushing down. The more you push down, the thicker it is. See, thick and thin. Play around with sketching with this thing. Just tools in the toolbox to try. I have a link for one of these a calligraphy pen on my description box. Not the one I use because this was gifted to us by my late father-in-law, and I don't know, I think he found a set at a yard sale or something like that. He loved to go on yard sales, so as you can see that none of my lines are perfect. I want that sketchy kind of look with the windows. You can just fill it in. This is constant, going back into the jar here. You can get real detail with this kind of pen too. You can go in and do all the little teeny lines. So on this roof over here, you see these little tooth kind of marks. Go ahead and put all that in. Little teeth, as I would call them. You know, take your time. Take your time with all this. It will take a little longer than using the Sharpie, but the look is kind of cool. So there's a window over here that's got a lot of detail. You try and draw it in. Now that the building is very light, you can draw in all the details. It could take a little time, but this is something you do when you're like, you want to relax. You just draw in all these little... Now, I'm not drawing every single little line that I see. I'm editing it, you know, for all intents and purposes, because you could go crazy trying to draw every single architectural detail in these, see this little thing on here on the roof. It just kind of looks like a wiggle kind of sculpture to me. And that's kind of what I drew in. You see, I'm really kind of editing what I'm putting in this picture. There's a lot more detail than I'm putting in. I'm just kind of getting the gist of the building. This building has all these little crannies, nooks, and architectural details that I just didn't stick in. Oh, see? Ugh, it happens. Try and fix it right away. Paper towel. Okay, so you know what? It's a good thing that's on the gray side. Take my paintbrush and try and get rid of some of that ink. Yeah, it's a little mishap. Oh, and look, I'm getting it everywhere. You're witnessing the trials and tribulations of my life here. See? Can I wet it? So as you see what not to do, take your time. I might even edit this out. I might see I'm going to add some blue ink, blue watercolor to kind of compensate that. I might just have to deal with having splats there. Another trick is you can take an X-Acto blade and kind of scrape your paper a little bit. Just be careful. So I'm going to go through and do all the little lines. And like I said, if you're intimidated, you can just go in here and take a Sharpie pen, which I might do now actually, after what I just did to my drawing, and then go into all the lines that way. Or you could have drawn with the Sharpie pen at the beginning and gone back in and edited what you want to do for all the details, because there are a lot of details. And it's skinnier than the ink nib, to use the Sharpie pen. Okay. So I'm going to finish drawing all these things with my pen and come back. Okay, so I filled in all my stuff. So when I say, you know, I made that little mistake here, when it's dry, you can just take this X-Acto blade. It's still wet right now, but you can kind of lift up the paint a little bit. See? Play around with it. Just be careful. You can hear that scrapey noise. See? A little trick. This one has to dry a little more, but you get the idea. Hold it on its side. Just kind of scrape up the paint a little bit. So it's a little bit wet still, but that's how we're going to do our architectural watercolor today. So any building that you like, you know, if you have a photograph, you can do it with the Sharpie pen, but I love the ink because it makes those imperfect lines, you know. Like I said, you don't have to do it that way. You could buy a calligraphy pen that's like a ballpoint pen. I have one in my drawer somewhere. I can't find it, but anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I don't know. You know, I'm just thinking up some things that you might want to try. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Also, check out my Patreon. So if you are a Patreon member, you can download the traceable that I drew for this. But I gave a reference photo for others, and you can just blow it up, you know, shake it down. And remember, see, there's so many details in this picture. I just did the basic ones. And that's how you do it for like an architecture or a house or whatever. You could put all the details in, but you don't have to. So thank you guys for stopping by. Take care, and I will speak to you soon.